What we're going to do now is attach the radio to the servos and the speed controller. So you need to look at your radio's manual and figure out how that's going to work. You're going to need to use Elevon mixing to make it happen, and you'll just have to look around and figure out how to make that work. So the next step is getting your receiver right here, and this is a little spread spectrum receiver that we're using right now, and we're going to hook it up and attach it to our servos. And now you cable tie the receiver on. So we're going to clean up our previous efforts a little bit. Get those out of the way. And we take the receiver and we cable tie it on using the tried and true punch holes through things technique. Take one of these. Run it through. And now we have an attached receiver. Clean that out. Be careful you don't snip other wires by mistake. We're going to run this around, oops, here. And we find a nice clean place for the speed controller, generally off to the side someplace like here. All right, and you know, you don't have to get too worried about aerodynamics, but you can just sort of make it neatness, you know, not a bad thing on a towel. And so we're going to attach the speed controller, and we're just going to put a couple of holes around it. Get some cable ties out. Give a cable tie or two on it. These speed controllers and motors have been incredibly reliable for us, despite being so inexpensive. They're one of the most reliable components we have. I don't think we've had a failure unless we've done something really horrendous to it, like drop it in water of a speed controller. And the motors have basically withstood all sorts of abuse. So they really, it's a nice combination, to be sure. So zip tie that up. Okay, clean that up. And generally, just because when this thing crashes, and you are going to crash, this will tend to slide back and forth, so we're going to make life easier. We don't want the speed controller sliding all over the place. We're going to put a cable tie in the front and in the back to just kind of keep this bad boy from going anywhere when you whack into the ground. And you'll be laughing while you do it. You don't have to worry about going to find your speed controller in the grass because it went flying. All right, there we go. And that comes up, around, and we have a nice sort of all relevant dimensions. If you're short on twist ties, then just do it on this long dimension. That's the dimension that's going to matter. All right. So we now have a somewhat neat, you can all make this a lot neater and do a little fancy stuff, but we're not going to do that right now. This has two aerials coming off it because it's a 2.4 gigahertz radio. Just put this off someplace different. It's in a different orientation than the other one. This is a great place for it. And generally I'll put a little piece of tape on there to keep it all neat and clean so things don't get whacked when I don't want them to get whacked. Alright, a little cleanup on the servos. And we're almost ready to go.
Now that you've put this deck together pretty much, we already talked about these control rods. We're going to just use the ones that we already had made. Basically, you just shove these through here. Get them in the bend, and to the Elevon controls. Do it on one side, then you do it on another. Basically, when you're making an original towel, you're going to spend some time adjusting the length of these to match the size and placement of the deck into the towel. But these are already made and have flown before, so we're going to use them like that. So now you really, really are close to having an airplane, and now we're going to mount it on a deck. And here's our deck. Here's our, not our deck, here's our towel, and the deck goes on it like this. And since we have these made, and these are a length, we can easily, with the center line of the deck and the towel, and knowing that we want the Elevon's connection point to be over the center of the fulcrum of the Elevons here, You want this to be over the center line of the bend. We look at this, we look at our deck, we see if it's straight. A little bit of adjusting here and there is normal. You also want these to be, as you can see, it's a fine science that we work on. But basically that's about where we're going to put this deck. So now that we have this all aligned, we want to make sure that we have just a little bit of a throw upwards. The towel is a very interesting plane to fly, and what you really want to ensure is that it constantly is wanting to go up. Because if you don't, it may constantly want to go down, and that's not where you want to be with this plane. So once you have it lined up and you have a little bit of a throw there, make sure you're straight and punch some holes. Once these holes are punched, that's pretty much where the plane's going to be situated. Four holes. And I like to, before I move any further, I like to punch a hole or two in the deck and the towel, just to get an idea of where it is. Because when I start attaching the cable ties, it's bound to move it somewhat. Okay, now we just need a very large supply of cable ties, and we move on. This one was set up with the elvan being attached side to side. We found that this is not the most optimal method, but we're going to use it because it's here. Sometimes when you punch these holes, they don't go all the way through. So when you go to put a cable tie, you're spending a lot of time looking on the bottom for where it goes. If that happens, just go back and punch a bigger hole. We're not too dainty about this process at this point. We found that, as you saw, one of the towels very beat up and still flyable. There's not much you can do to keep this thing on the ground, and certainly these minute measurements have some sort of effect on the plane's flight, but not great enough to spend a lot of time worrying about. Again, the idea of this plane is to have an inexpensive, easy to build, easy to fly, easy to repair once you've destroyed it plane. And we pretty much have done that. We're very happy with the result. Once you've lined up the elvons, I want to see if you're still lined up with the holes you originally punched through the deck, and see if your alignment is right. And voila, right through. Perfect. Exactly where you wanted it. And put the cable tie through. Try to find a hole on the other side. If you don't, you can make some space. Look through. There you go. That's one. And we'll do one more. Right through. There's our other hole. Through the hole. Voila, that's pretty much the attachment of the deck. You can add more cable ties to make it a little more secure. But we're going to move on at this point and just do a little cleanup. I like to leave a little bit on the cable ties because as you go flying and you have ground contact with your airplane, it's good to be able to have something to grab to tighten up as it becomes vintage.